This is part one of a multi-part video series on how to create a React component library using Parcel.js, TypeScript, Sass, and many other tools like Plop, which is a templating or scaffolding engine, and Storybook for viewing our components in the DOM during development. Go ahead and get started with the project setup. So the first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and init the npm. So we're going to say npm init. It's going to ask us for the package name. The version we're going to set to is 0.0.1 as it's going to be a pre-release version. The description we're going to go ahead and leave blank for the time being. The entry point we're going to leave because we're going to change it. Test command, same thing. I have the Git repository, but you don't necessarily need to. I'm going to say component library, React, TypeScript, and Parcel.js. Author is going to be myself, and license. And we're going to say OK. Perfect. And there we go. So then we're going to go ahead and install all of the dependencies that we need for this application, at least for the part that we're focusing on now, which is just getting something for Parcel to go ahead and build. So like I mentioned earlier, we need to install TypeScript since that's what we're using. We also need to install Parcel. We need to install the types for React and the types for React DOM. And I think this will take a minute, so I'll see you back here in just a few seconds. All right, perfect. So those have gone ahead and installed. So let me go ahead and install the rest of the dependencies, which is going to be actual dependencies, and that's going to be React and React DOM. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and do one more thing that's required for TypeScript to function. And the best way that I can think of doing this is doing a tsc --init, and that's going to create us a tsc config file. And one thing that we need to remember to do is come over here where it says JSX preserve and set that flag to be preserve. That way, whenever this thing gets built, Parcel and React and everything else can happen, and knowing of the TSX files. So one of the next things we need to do is we need to go ahead and create a few directories. So I'm just going to do this all through here. So make directory, source. We're going to cd into source, and we're going to say make directory components. Alrighty, and then we're going to cd back out of that. And then we're going to come back over here. We're going to create a new file at the source directory. We're just going to call this index.tsx. And then underneath components, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this actually button/button or index.tsx. And that'll create us a folder called button. And there we go. And then lastly, we're going to create yet another index.tsx, but that's going to be at the component level. And this will start to make sense here in a second. So let's go ahead and close out all of these files and hop over to the documentation for Parcel. So we've already installed Parcel as a dependency. Now we need to continue with their project setup for a library. And what they're going to tell you is that basically the target is going to be the output file, which is your main, and your source is what files need to be built by Parcel itself. So if we go ahead and copy these guys over and go over to our package.json file, we can come over here and replace our main with what we've got over here. So we have source, which is going to be source/index.tsx. And then our main, that is fine. And we need to go back and take a look at a couple of other things. We'll go ahead and add the scripts here in a minute. We need to continue with a little bit of setup. We need to go ahead and support ES modules. So come back over here, do the same thing. So dist module.js. And then lastly, since we're using TypeScript, we also need to include the types in the directory of the distribution. So whenever that it builds this index.ts file, the types will go along with it, which will be very helpful in the long haul. And then lastly, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and copy over the scripts, which is going to be a parcel build and a parcel watch command. The parcel watch does exactly what you think it will. It'll watch any files that are exported out of this index.ts file and build them. And then likewise, the build will not watch, it'll just build it once and output it to the distribution folder. So let's go ahead and get started. First, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a function here, and I'm going to export it. It's going to be called add, and that's going to take a, which is a number, and a b, which is a number, and we're going to return a plus b. And then I'm actually going to run npm run build here. And this is going to build, and it's actually going to do a couple of other things, which I really can applaud Parcel for this. Since it knows that we're using TypeScript to build out this package, or to build out this library, it's going to install a couple of dependencies for us, and that is the Parcel Packager TS and the Transformer TypeScript types. So that'll happen automatically. But another thing that you can notice is that it's actually caching the results of the build, so that way it doesn't have to do it every single time, making this thing extremely fast. So if I run npm run build again, it almost happens instant. So that's really nice, but we do need to go ahead and add that to our gitignore. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here and quickly add parcel cache. And that'll get removed from gitignore, which is great, or from git. So let's go ahead and see what happened whenever we go look at our files. We can see that we have our main, and we have all the parcel loveliness that you're not going to be able to read. We have our module here, and then we also have our types. So we can have type of add. It's going to be a number, return a number, and that's fantastic. But everybody wants to see this being done with a component. So this is how I set up my components whenever I build out a library. There's nothing really crazy about it. But I do components, and then I create the component name. Sometimes I'll have core, maybe I'll have grid, or maybe I'll have form inputs. But for right now, to keep it simple, I've created a button folder, which has a button element in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to first start off and create an interface. So there we go, we just created a button element pretty quick. This is actually going to extend the button HTML attributes that come from React. And one of the things that we're probably going to need to do is also import React from React to make sure that we get those types generated. Then inside of our components file, so this is our components file, we're going to export button from button. So, and then we're going to go down into the main file, and we're going to export button from the components, like so. So there's a little bit of a, export, but what this is really going to allow us to do is the next time that we want to create a component, and we start getting into plop, which we'll do in a later video, this will allow us to do things rather quickly and do it programmatically rather than handling it the way that we are now, which is kind of tedious, like I can see. But we'll go ahead and run npm run build again. There we go, pretty quick. And we go look at the types, and you can see that we have iButton props, which extends React, and then we have our HTML button, and then we have our button, which is extending the iButton props, and then we have our JSX button. So that's pretty much the entire file structure that we're going to deal with right now. In the next video, we'll talk about Sass and how to incorporate Sass into our build. But we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.